soon as we started asking questions, we started not getting answers to questions. So anytime you don't get answers to questions, you start questioning things more. And as we went down the rabbit hole, we found out more and more of how they're proposing government light and such. Those things don't stay government light. The money just keeps coming out of the taxpayer's hand.
All right, now, how many people in Perdido would you say share your opinion?
I've had quite a few people that were for it, but they were the same as me. As soon as they started asking questions and not getting any response, then it led them back to, hey, we're not getting answers, and we've got more questions, and where's the money actually coming from?
You know, you've gone to the sheriff, you've gone to the supervisor of elections. You didn't come to us.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't want to overstep my bounds.
I don't think that's overstepping your bounds. I mean, you're leading this way, and the citizens need to know what's going to happen when it January 1st, 2025, if it passes. And
thankfully we're still a long way off. So there's a lot of eyes that are going to look on
You're not a long way off from the bill. That's where it gets settled.
Again, I'm neutral on this. If you want, if the people out there want it, go get it. I mean, you can have Perdido Key Drive, you can have Bower Road. That makes my job easier. Are you guys going to take the roads?
Again, that's not for me to decide. That would be.
But personally, I think it is. I mean,
you're running the whole deal.
You're asking them to set up something up, and we're going to say we're going to set up this entity, but we're not going to know what we do until we set it up. I mean, like that. I believe it is your job to establish what you guys are going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it.
It's my job to do the research to help pull together the feasibility study.
Okay, well then we need to be talking with the person who is going to be
who makes the decision,
who's going to be setting it up.
Some of the constituents that I represent have reached out to me, and many of them are on the mistaken belief that if this study area, which is very, very large, by the way, it doesn't meet the statutory requirements, by the way. It's only 1.1 citizen per acre. It's supposed to be 1.5, so it already doesn't, in their own study says that. But there are folks of the mistaken belief that if that entire area is sliced off, that everything that we collect now, they're going to suddenly get it, and we're not going to get it. So that's certainly fiction. Like you said, Mr. Chairman, the 6.615 mills we will still get. My understanding is the new city has no interest in creating their own police force, so my understanding is the MSTU for the sheriff will still be on their tax bills. My understanding is they're not going to create their own fire service like Pensacola does, so I assume the MSBU is still going to be on their tax bills. They're not going to have their own schools, so they're still going to pay school board tax. And like you said, anything over and above that will require revenue being raised other ways. Now, things they could do, things they can do and will do probably if they're successful, is they'll add a 10% utility tax right off the bat. 20,000 citizens over there will get 10% increase on their electric bill right off the bat. And they'll raise a lot of money that way. My understanding from speaking to Lynn Tipton at the League of Cities, who I've spoken with a number of times, is in order for them to tap into the big money, the state shared revenue, they have to raise the equivalent of 3 mills of their tax roll. Their tax roll is about 3.6 billion. So 3 mills of that is nearly 11 million. The only way they can get there, they have 3 ways. They can raise the utilities tax, which I just discussed. They can add mills to the tax bill, not taking anything from us, adding over the top, or they can initiate new business tax and fees. They have to do all of that, raise the 10 million before they can tap in to their share of the half-cent sales tax or the other shared revenue. They can get franchise fees, but that has to be negotiated. My understanding is if we have an existing franchise agreement with some providers, they have to wait till that expires before they can tap into that. And I know we have franchise fees. So there's a number of ways they can do it, but I want citizens to have all the facts. Again, if they incorporate, that makes our job a lot easier. Hey, Bower Road, Perdido Key Drive, go get them, Tiger, take it.
To have the residents know what services are going to be covered, how they're going to cover them, what services the county's going to keep, what facilities, whatever. It needs to be worked out on the front end, in my opinion.
What people have to ask is, what problem is it solving? If it's safety, public safety, where you're not going to have your own fire station, your own police department. If it's roads, well, if they don't want the roads, how's that solving a problem? If they're not going to have their own fire service, not going to have their own schools, I believe they're going to be using our code and zoning. So you really have to ask yourself, do you want another layer of government over the top, which you will pay extra for? Or are there things the county's doing that we can maybe do better? Those are the questions you have to ask before you vote.
You feel like you've got a large number of people that they want to pay more tax for more service.
So the way
Is that the gist of it?
the feasibility study, as it's laid out, as it proposes it, would require no additional tax revenue for the citizens of Perdido.
I don't mean to be
No, that's
curt with you. That's not going to get approved by this board. I mean, our board's not going to approve an interlocal agreement that has us collecting less revenue. I mean, that's not the way our other municipalities exist. I do represent the town of Century, which pays county taxes as well, and then pays additional taxes because they're inside the town limits. I would not think that they would be very happy if I would approve an agreement that had a reduction in ad valorem for a new municipality.
the losses to the county are offset by that the county doesn't have the responsibility anymore to do those types of projects. So any transfer of revenue in that regard is a
But
wash.
The baseline is that other municipalities pay the same ad valorem rate that the county residents pay.
Mm-hmm. And that would not change. It would be the same as it's proposed in
And the county receives those revenues from the residents of the municipalities in Escambia County. We receive 100% of those revenues.
Yes.
So you're not saying that's going to change?
No, that's not going to change.
You just stood up there and said there's going to be no additional taxes, but there will be. Are you not going to levy a 10% utility tax? That's your quickest way to revenue that you have to get to in order to tap into the shared revenue.
That's not my decision. I'm doing the research, and that would be up to the citizens.
But
to decide.
it is a tool available to them. It's one of the only tools to get to the 10 or 11 million they need to raise to meet the statutory requirement to get So to say there's no new taxes, I think one of the first things...
I never said no new taxes.
Steve, that is what I asked you. Do people want to pay more tax for a higher level of service?
We'll have to see if they want to do that, though.
You know, you said to me that you would be taking away, you said that you would get the ad valorem, but we wouldn't be doing the service anymore. So what services are those?
Those funds would transfer to the municipality, as would the responsibility for those things.
It's a pretty big thing that we need to establish on what we're not going to be responsible for, that we're going to then come up with an MOU that says that we're going to handle, or you guys are going to, I mean, I think that's the big question is, what will you guys be handling?
Steve, it seems to me that these conversations should have been happening 6 months ago. It takes a while to draft one of these and get it through this board, and it sounds like there's still a lot of meat on the bone in terms of exactly what services the new municipality is going to provide and which ones they're not, which ones we're going to shed.
They're detailed in the report.
Yeah, I understand, but here's the thing: they're not detailed in an MOU that this board's going to vote on yet. Again, I'm neutral on this. If the people out there want it, go get it. I mean, you can have Perdido Key Drive, you can have Bower Road. That makes my job easier. Are you guys going to take the roads?
Again, that's not for me to decide. That would be.
But personally, I think it is. I mean,
you're running the whole deal.
You're asking them to set up something up, and we're going to say we're going to set up this entity, but we're not going to know what we do until we set it up. I mean, like that is, I believe it is your job to establish what you guys are going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it.
It's my job to do the research to help pull together the feasibility study as the towns.
Then we need to be talking with the person who is going to be
who makes the decision,
who's going to be setting it up.
November 2024 general election is where we would target having the referendum.
Right.
Our board's not going to put something on the ballot that affects us without knowing what the effect's going to be. I mean, the terms of what the entity, the terms of the relation, the terms of the agreement between the entities is a major part of the establishment of the municipality.
I'll start working on that today.
Yeah, and Steve, another thing to consider, and I don't want to sound like I'm being negative. Again, I'm neutral, but there's a lot of folks who have a lot of questions and they don't feel like the question's been answered. This board approved $3.6 million. You know, I have an initiative out there to open up and expand additional public beach access. How will the municipality be able to pay for those parks? Because we're not going to just give you the parks, right? And the parks and the facilities out there that we have, I mean, is it your intention to take that over? I mean, I've got $3.6 million. We're looking for more public beach access, but is the city going to find a way to borrow money and pay for our parks and take that over? Again, it makes my job easier. It's a lot of
Right.
work out there.
And I'd love to make your job easier. As
I'm sure
proposed
you would.
in the feasibility report, it doesn't envision taking over county assets.
So you're not going to have the parks either. So there are no roads, no schools, no fire, no parks. You're not sure what services you're going to do.
One important benefit that I want to point out is every new town in the state of Florida is required in the first 3 years to produce its own comprehensive long-term plan, own planning and zoning and land use development code for a more localized, community-centric planning and zoning.
Well, I'm
and
glad you
development.
brought that up because I've had several residents, they're very concerned. We have a habitat conservation plan at Perdido Key, which is a large portion of the economic engine that would drive a new city. We also have a very, very detailed master plan. I support both of those. We've worked very hard. I've got Tim Day here. So is the new city, is the intention, because I've heard some folks that want to limit development and they think that this will be a tool that they can do it. But I would say to those folks, we already have a very, very difficult process with the Habitat Conservation Plan and the master plan. Would it be the intention to change those plans? And Tim, could they even change those plans? Could they? I don't think it can disregard the Habitat Conservation Plan even if they incorporate.
That is a delegation to Escambia County, so
We would
that-
still be in charge.
That would be up in the air if they wanted to come in and, the feds would have to be involved in whether or not the delegation would be able to be assigned to the new city or not, and it may be that it can't be.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that.
I just think there's a ton of meat on the bones. I get it. You guys are pushing this thing to get it in, but it almost is starting to feel like a square peg being jammed into the round hole because you're out of time in terms of a lot of these things.
Alex Andrade, a Republican member of the Florida legislature representing the state's second House district, which includes parts of Escambia and Santa Rosa counties, said the following about the leadership of the group, "We Are Perdido." I'm going to be adamant because they have to acknowledge that their website is very misleading. There is absolutely no way for you to guarantee right now as you stand here that taxes and fees will not be increased because the feasibility study says that costs of municipal operations for the city will increase between 20 and 26%. In their feasibility study, they say that costs to run that area will increase 20 to 26%, and yet they're still claiming, we're not going to have to raise taxes and fees to do it.
The design of this video is to provide information, data, and facts. So we put some space in between some of the clips so that you could organize your thoughts on the points being made. And we hope that you will join us in this wonderful process of dialogue, question, and ideas.